Sometimes the truth doesn't come from evidence, documents, or hidden recordings. Sometimes it comes from the one person you least expect, your best friend. In today's story, you'll see how a single testimony, given at the most crucial moment, completely changed the outcome of a case, destroyed carefully built lies, and revealed a reality that no one saw coming. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to our channel for daily stories like this, filled with suspense, truth, and powerful life lessons. The courtroom was tense. The defendant sat silently, his eyes fixed on the ground, knowing that the case had turned against him. For weeks, the opposing side had built their argument brick by brick, convincing the jury that the man sitting there was guilty of everything he had been accused of. The evidence looked strong. The witnesses had painted him as dishonest, manipulative, and even dangerous. And with each passing day, the chances of freedom grew thinner. But then, the lawyer did something unexpected. He called a name that made everyone's head turn. A name that hadn't appeared on the official witness list. A name no one thought would ever step into that courtroom. It was his best friend, the one who had known him since childhood, the one who had shared his secrets, his struggles, and his dreams. The crowd gasped. Some whispered in disbelief. Why would a best friend take the stand in a case like this? Surely loyalty would blind him. Surely his words wouldn't carry much weight. But the lawyer knew something the rest didn't. This testimony wasn't about loyalty. It was about truth. When the best friend took the stand, he looked nervous but determined. He swore to tell the truth, his hands trembling slightly as he adjusted the microphone. For a moment, the entire room fell silent, waiting for what he was about to say. And then he began. He spoke of the years he had known the defendant. He painted a picture of a man who was far from perfect, but not the monster the prosecution had described. He told stories that revealed character, kindness, and moments of integrity that no one else had seen. But then his voice shifted. It became firmer, more serious, because he wasn't just there to defend his friend blindly. He was there to tell the court something no one else dared to say, something that had been hidden until now. The judge leaned forward. The jury watched closely. The opposing lawyer frowned, sensing danger, and the defendant, for the first time in weeks, raised his head to look at his friend, eyes wide with both fear and hope. What the best friend revealed in that moment would turn the entire case upside down. It was the kind of truth. The best friend paused, his voice shaking slightly, but his eyes locked onto the jury as if he was speaking directly to each of them. "I have nothing to gain by being here today," he said. "In fact, I know some people will hate me for what I'm about to say, but I can't sit back and watch lies decide someone's future." The courtroom grew even quieter. You could feel the weight of every word. People leaned in, waiting. The judge's gavel hadn't moved, because he too wanted to hear what was coming next. Then the truth came out. The best friend revealed that one of the key witnesses for the prosecution, the one who had given the strongest testimony against the defendant, had confessed something years earlier, in private. They had admitted to twisting the story for personal gain, to make sure the defendant suffered. Back then, the best friend had stayed silent, thinking it would never matter. But now, standing in court, he knew it was time to speak. The prosecution immediately jumped to their feet, objecting. "This is hearsay," they shouted. But the lawyer was ready. He presented a small piece of paper the friend had kept, a note written years ago, where that same witness bragged about how easy it would be to ruin someone's reputation with the right story. The courtroom erupted. Gasps filled the air. The jurors exchanged glances, realizing the story wasn't as clear-cut as they had been told. The best friend continued. He admitted that his testimony wasn't easy, that speaking against powerful lies could cost him friendships, relationships, even his own reputation. But as he looked over at his friend, sitting at the defense table, he knew what he was doing was bigger than loyalty. It was about justice. "I would rather lose everything," he said firmly, "than let an innocent man lose his life to a lie." Tears welled in the eyes of some family members sitting in the back. The defendant himself struggled to keep composure. For weeks, he had felt abandoned, trapped in a system stacked against him. And now, with just a few words, his best friend had given him something he thought was gone forever: hope. The prosecution tried desperately to discredit the testimony. They attacked the friend's credibility, accusing him of fabricating the story, of making it up at the last moment to save his friend. But every time they pushed, the lawyer calmly reminded the court of the written note, the consistency of his statements, and the courage it took to even come forward at all. The judge allowed the testimony to stand, and in that moment, the balance of the trial shifted. What had once looked like a clear victory for the prosecution now began to crack under the weight of truth. And yet the best friend wasn't finished. He had one more revelation to share, something that would not only shock the courtroom, but prove beyond a doubt that the lies woven around this case were about to unravel completely. The courtroom was holding its breath. Everyone thought the best friend had said all he needed to say, but then he leaned forward slightly, his voice calm, but filled with determination. "There's something else," he said. "Something I've been carrying for far too long." The defense lawyer stepped closer, nodding. "Go on," he encouraged. The jurors sat straighter, their pens paused above their notepads. The friend revealed that on the night of the incident in question, he himself had been there, not at the center of it, but close enough to see things unfold differently than the prosecution had described. He admitted that he had been too afraid to come forward earlier, scared of being dragged into the storm, of losing everything he had worked for. But now, watching his best friend's life hang in the balance, he couldn't stay quiet. He explained in detail what he saw. Small but crucial details. Details that directly contradicted the main witness's testimony. He described how the timeline didn't match, how certain events were impossible in the way they were described, and most importantly, how his best friend had been elsewhere at a critical moment. The words hit like thunder. The prosecution scrambled, flipping through papers, trying to catch him in a mistake. But the more they questioned, the stronger his testimony became. Every answer was clear, consistent, and backed by memory he could not forget. He wasn't just speaking as a friend. He was speaking as someone who had been an eyewitness all along. Whispers echoed through the courtroom. Even members of the jury exchanged knowing looks. The case that once seemed airtight was unraveling thread by thread. And then came the most shocking part. The best friend said, "I've been living with guilt all this time, because I didn't just see the truth. I kept a piece of it." He reached into his pocket and pulled out an old phone, scratched and worn. On it was a video clip he had saved but never dared to show. A video he had recorded on the very night in question, without realizing how important it would become. The defense attorney's eyes widened. He asked the judge for permission to present it. After a tense pause, the judge agreed. The lights dimmed slightly as the video was displayed before the court. It showed exactly what the best friend had described. Proof that the story the prosecution had built was not just weak, but false. The key witness who had spoken so confidently was shown in a different place, at a different time. The video didn't just create doubt, it shattered the foundation of the case. Gasps filled the room. Some jurors put their hands over their mouths. Even the judge leaned forward, watching closely. The prosecution objected furiously, but it was too late. The evidence had spoken louder than any words could. For the first time, the defendant lifted his head, a glimmer of relief breaking through the heaviness that had weighed him down. His best friend had not only spoken up, but had brought undeniable proof. Still, the trial wasn't over. The defense had just turned the tables, but the prosecution wasn't about to back down without a fight. The final battle of this courtroom drama was only beginning. The courtroom was no longer silent. It was electrified. Everyone knew that what they had just seen could not be ignored. The video was clear, undeniable, and it tore apart the story that the prosecution had carefully built. The jurors shifted in their seats, their expressions a mixture of shock and realization. The prosecutor rose quickly, trying to regain control. He argued that the video could be fabricated, that it was unreliable. But the defense attorney was ready. He had the phone verified, the timestamp authenticated, and even brought in a forensic expert on the spot who confirmed its authenticity. Every attempt to discredit the evidence failed. The tide had turned. What once seemed like a hopeless case now looked very different. The best friend's testimony combined with the video had not only introduced reasonable doubt, it had brought the truth to light. The judge leaned back, tapping the gavel softly. The weight of the courtroom's energy was undeniable. The jury members now looked at the defendant with new eyes, not as someone guilty, but as someone who had been trapped by lies and silence. When the final arguments were made, the defense spoke with passion. Sometimes the truth hides in the most unexpected places, and sometimes it takes courage, not from lawyers, not from officials, but from ordinary people to bring that truth forward. Today, we saw that courage. The jury deliberated. Hours felt like days. Every tick of the clock echoed in the hearts of those waiting. And then finally, the jurors filed back into the courtroom. The four persons stood and spoke the words everyone had been waiting for. Not guilty. Gasps, sighs of relief, even tears filled the room. The defendant closed his eyes, overwhelmed, while his best friend gripped his shoulder tightly. What could have been the end of his life was now the start of a new chapter, all because someone found the courage to speak when it mattered most. The prosecutor looked defeated, and the courtroom began to empty. But the message lingered in the air, one powerful enough to move everyone who had witnessed it. Truth may be delayed, but it cannot be destroyed. Lies may stand for a while, but they always crumble when faced with honesty and courage. And as for the best friend, he left the courthouse with his head held high. He had carried the weight of silence for too long. That day, he proved that loyalty is not just about standing by someone in easy times. It's about standing for the truth, even when the world is against you. Friends, this story carries a message for all of us. Life will test our courage. It will ask us to choose between silence and truth, between fear and loyalty. And in those moments, the choice we make can change everything, not only for us, but for the people we love. Thank you for watching this story. If you found meaning in it, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful daily stories that inspire, teach, and remind us of the strength within us all. Your support helps us continue bringing you messages that matter. Remember, truth and courage always win in the end. Stay strong, stay honest, and always choose the path that leads to light.